Good evening, everyone. It is January 11th, Tuesday, 2022. It's the first regular meeting of this year. So I welcome you all to the town board, OliveTown Board meeting for January 11th. Can we all have the Pledge of Allegiance put up, please? All right. Everybody's muted. Drew, do you want to help us lead this?
Sure. Everybody standing?
Yeah,
I pledge
here we
allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United
United
States
States of
America,
and
to the republic
for which
for
it
which it
stands,
stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty,
liberty,
justice
justice
for all.
Yeah, I think we had some younger people there helping us out with that too. Thank you. Okay. Dawn, you're on. Can you do the roll call, please? You're muted.
I
There you
can.
go.
Board Member Bogus.
I'm here.
Board Member Kelder.
I'm here.
Board Member Ettinger.
I'm here.
Board Member Reed. And Supervisor Sefranco.
I am here. Thank you, Dawn. We've got a lot of business tonight. We did not have a workshop meeting, so you'll have to bear with us. A lot of stuff to discuss. We had, let's get to the December minutes. You've all seen the December minutes that Dawn sent out. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes for December?
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes from December.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Correspondence. We had correspondence from Esther Norman Rios. The request for a speed zone of 30 miles an hour be posted to Bostock Road. I will discuss that later. That's on the agenda to discuss. Oh, actually, it's not on the agenda. No, I have it on the resolution. I'm sorry, it's on the resolutions. So we can discuss that a little bit later. We received a letter from Pankti Patel expressing her views on the proposed STR law. And that was sent to all of the board members, as is all the correspondence. And that will be filed with all of the correspondence we received on the STR law. And we are reviewing them, and we'll be having another public hearing at some time in the future on that. Mary Ann Shepherd and Linda Werner sent a letter expressing their concern for communication between the town and the community. And that letter was received, and that is up for discussion later on in the agenda. So I'm not going to go into the details of the letter there. I see one or two of them here. They can discuss it if they like. We have the payment of the audited bills. You've got to see the bills tonight, most of you, and I'd like to get a motion to approve general fund vouchers number 1 through 10 for $141,080.56, and highway fund vouchers number 1 and number 2 for $44,173.85. Can I get a second, please?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Oh, we got it? The second? All in favor, please.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. We had a cash received in December for $66,203.72. We had interest received in December for $458.55. Let's get right to the resolutions here. Resolution number 1 of 2022 is to appoint the inspector for the wastewater sewer system. Whereas Chapter 117 of the Town of Olive Code addresses sewers within the town, and whereas an individual or her authorized representative chosen by the town board is to be responsible for overseeing municipal wastewater treatment sewer system operations in the town. And whereas the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation has requested on-site inspections of grease traps in the sewer district with said designated town inspector per town code 117-59. And therefore be it resolved, the town board of the town of Olive designates Barry Rulin, an LVDV Operations Incorporated employee, as inspector to oversee municipal wastewater treatment plant sewer system operations. Barry's been doing this for a few years, and we had a previous person who left, and I realized that we had never made a resolution to formally recognize him. And I wanted to do so as we get into the new year. So can I get a motion? I make the motion to move resolution number 1 of 2022. Can I get a second?
A second.
Dawn, can you do the roll call?
Board Member Bogus,
Yes.
Board Member Kelder.
You need
Scott,
to be
is
frozen.
that-
Not seeing a lot of
All right.
motion there.
We'll come back to him. Board Member Hareed
Aye.
and Supervisor Sefranco.
You skipped
Aye.
me.
Oh, I
Yes.
missed you. Board Member Edinger.
Yes.
There's Scott back.
Scott, we're having a hard time hearing you. You're froze up.
Can you
Video's
thumbs
frozen.
up me or down me?
His
I don't
video's
know if
frozen,
he's
so
there.
Yeah, he's frozen.
Okay. Can't
Yes.
hear him, can we?
we got a yes.
You got a yes?
Yeah.
Oh, he unfroze.
Good.
Okay, there he is. That was a yes, right? Okay, Scott, thank you. Okay, resolution number 1 is approved. Resolution number 2 of 2022 is the request for the New York State Department of Transportation speed limit reduction on Bostock Road.
Yes.
Esther Norman presented us with a petition. And it had, I believe, around 40 signatures or so, I believe, all in the area of Bostock Road, expressing concern about the speed and the traffic and the conditions on the road. And, we get these occasionally from people, and there is a process to follow on this. We received a petition. We have a resolution before us to request the speed study from the Department of Transportation. That will go to first to the Ulster County Department of Transportation, and then they will forward it to the state. I'm
As I'm
hearing some
getting all the
voices in the background. I
We're
don't know
getting
where
all the
that's from.
communication that Scott said before that's just delayed because he's been muted for the last
Oh,
90
okay.
seconds.
Okay. Funny. Okay, so is there any discussion on this? Does anyone want to speak on this before we vote on this? It's just a formality to start what could be a year to 2 year process. It's rather lengthy, and I have made the speed limit on our request just to lower the speed limit. It's best not to put a speed limit designation on it, because in our last one, we put one on, and it was kind of, the response was directed at the speed limit we requested. So I'd like to leave it open at that.
Jim, I'd like to make one comment. I think later on in the year, we should all have a discussion about whether or not we want to investigate putting speed
Mojo,
limit on all of the town roads or not.
Scott, we're getting a weird loop of sound from you, even though you're muted. We might actually have to ask you to drop off and come right back in. And you may want to try to just turn off your video first and see if that cleans up your stream. It's just very distracting. Yeah, we're still getting that
Still here.
sound. Do we want to take a quick pause while he gets out and comes back in?
He just sent a chat message. He's going to call in. So let's wait
Okay.
a second for him. Try to navigate that.
It
Um,
seems
These
like
days I'm
there's
gonna
a
have to go over his house and
background-
figure it out.
Seems like there's some kind of background behind the Zoom screen that's causing disruption. I don't know what it is, but it looks like
Behind what Zoom screen?
the picture that I see, there seems like a game or something behind the Zoom screen.
I don't see that
Partially
here.
showing up. Okay,
See that either.
all right. Well, I don't know if
I don't know
somebody's-
what's up with Scott's. Mine always seems to work fine here in Sampsonville, so.
It's likely his router, not just the internet.
You
Yeah.
pay your bill though, right?
Hmm.
Let's give him a sec, see if he comes in here. Esther's not here with this petition, right?
No, she's on this iPhone.
Yeah, it's great if people, when they come in and they see their screen, if they can identify themselves on the screen so we can identify who's attending the meeting. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to have the opportunity to speak if we have that. All right. No Scott here. Well, we can move ahead with this one without Scott. This is a pretty much a formality. You were speaking, Drew, if you want
Yeah.
to continue.
Because we've had a number of citizens ask for speed limits on their road. At the police commission, there's been discussions about excess speeds on a lot of our town roads. I think one of the things we ought to at least talk about later on in the year is whether we can and how it would be done and the cost of basically putting speed limit on all town roads. I don't know what the right number would be, and I don't know whether it's even a reasonable thing to do, but I think it's going to keep coming up because there's a lot of high-speed traveling on our local roads lately.
And when technically the speed limit's 55 on those roads, it's hard to enforce much.
Right.
So there is enforcement, if I can explain this as I understand it from my conversations with the police chief and others, is that the speed limit is 55 maximum on roads that aren't posted, or you need to travel at a reasonable speed. I'm not quite sure what the term is. There's a technical term for it. And I think it's a speed deemed reasonable or something along those lines. And so there is the possibility for enforcement if someone is speeding at a speed that doesn't seem appropriate for the road they're on. And what we found in the past, and what I think Brian can attest to this too, is that posting the speed limit does not stop people from speeding. I live on Route 28A. It's posted 35 miles an hour for the entire length of 28A. I don't think there's any passing in the town of Olive on 28A. And I have people tailgating me when I'm doing 40 or more and passing me on the double line, and they're doing at least 55 or 60, and they're giving me, gestures about their displeasure with me not quite and going as fast as they'd like. So I don't think signs are that effective myself. We can have this conversation. We've had it before later in the year, but that's my position on it right now, from what I understand. Anyone else want to weigh in on this?
I don't disagree with you either. I think the DOT kind of has the same idea that speed limit signs in of themselves is not a deterrent for speeding.
When we had problems with the Blue Hole last year, this past year, we put one of those temporary speed signs up right in front of the town office, and that helped. And what helped with that, though, was that we had targeted enforcement. We had police sitting near the sign and pulling people over and issuing tickets. And I don't know, I don't have any evidence to this, but I would think that the advent of social media has helped in that particular situation. In the other situation I hear from the police is that often it's a neighbor or a group of neighbors who consistently speed going to work same time every day, And what I've asked people is to document that as best they can. We can target enforcement if we know when it happens. But if you put a sign up and it doesn't seem to do it too much. But if there's not any other comments, we can move on with the resolution to send this off to DOT.
Sounds good to me.
Good to you. Okay, Scott, are you on there? Can I hear you?
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Hey, look at that.
great. Okay, well, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm going to read resolution number 2 of 2022, the request of New York State DOT reduce speed limit on Bostock Road. Whereas the town board of the town of Olive received a petition request from residents on Bostock Road in Shokan to lower the speed limit on Bostock Road, and therefore be it resolved, the town board of the town of Olive requests the New York State Department of Transportation conduct a speed limit study on Bostock Road, Shokan, New York. Can I get someone to make a motion? I made the motion, or I'll make the motion. And can I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay, let's do the roll call here.
Board Member Bogus,
Yes.
Board Member Kelder,
Yes.
Board Member Eniger,
Yes.
Board Member Reed,
Yes.
Supervisor Sefranco.
Yes. Okay, thank you all. So resolution 2 is passed, and we will send that on to the powers that be. Resolution number 3, I'm glad Tom's here to hear this. This is regarding a resolution we made in 2021 and the last meeting of 2021. The final rule of the American Rescue Plan, which is we call ARPA, came out yesterday or Friday, I'm not sure which, and clarified and tried to clarify a lot of the rules in there that were known previously as the interim rule. And the resolution we had, the resolution number 33 of 2021, kind of made some specific timelines and specific things in it that I think are going to make it more difficult. So what I wanted to do was just open it up and say that we have to conform to the criteria that's provided under the ARPA Coronavirus State and Local Recovery Fund final rule. And that way we can discuss as they want to expend these funds, whether we feel like they're qualifying or not. This is a great, there's a great deal of discussion on this subject with all the towns in the state. The document and the final rule is like 435 pages long, and it attempted to clarify the rule a little more, but I think it made it even more confusing. So as I wade through that, well, hopefully, and people start to see what's qualifying or not, we'll have a little more clarity as time goes on. And taking away that restriction of when this money's for will also give the fire department and the first aid much more flexibility in how they use it. So I will read this, the Town of Olive Resolution number 3 of 2022, grants for essential services under the American Rescue Plan Act, rescind and replace resolution number 33 of 2021. Whereas on March 11, 2021, the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, was signed into law to establish the Coronavirus State Physical Recovery Fund and Coronavirus Local Fiscal Recovery Funds. And whereas the SLFRF program provides support to non-entitlement units of local governments and EUs in response to the COVID-19 public health emergency, and supports the efforts of NEUs to contain impacts of COVID-19 on their communities, residents, and businesses. Whereas the Town of Olive meets the qualifications of a NEU being a local government serving a population of less than 50,000. And whereas the SLFRF program funding can be used to provide grants pursuant to a municipal contract to provide essential services to a municipality in recognition of the increased risk they face during COVID-19. And whereas the town board of the town of Olive recognizes Olive First Aid, Inc. and Olive Fire Department Number 1, Inc. as meeting the SLFRF qualifications as contractual entities necessary to protect the health and well-being of the residents of the town of Olive. Whereas the Olive First Aid and the Olive Fire Department both incurred additional expenses to prevent the spread of COVID-19, including personnel, protective equipment, and enhanced cleaning efforts. And whereas under New York State law, section 93, a town may rescind a resolution at any time. Now therefore it be resolved, the town board of the town of Olive rescinds resolution number 33 of 2021. And be it further resolved, the town board of the town of Olive replaces resolution number 33 of 2021 with resolution number 3 of 2022, authorizing the supervisor to pay Olive First Aid, Inc. and Olive Fire Department Number 1 the following amounts in dollars for essential services provided to the town of Olive in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And be it further resolved, the Olive First Aid and Olive Fire Department Number 1 will use these granted funds in accordance with the criteria provided under the ARPA Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds Final Rule. Olive First Aid, $5,000. Olive Fire Department, $3,000. And moves its adoption. Can I get a motion on that?
Make the
I'll make the
motion.
motion.
You got it, Drew. I'll second.
Okay, Dawn, can you do the roll call?
Board Member Bogus,
Yes.
Board Member Kelder,
Yes.
Board Member Edinger,
Yes.
Board Member Reed,
Yes.
Supervisor Sefranco.
Yes, yes. So approved. Thank you all. Bearing with me on that, and I'm sorry that I had to redo that. We received an appraisal a while back, about a month or two ago, and it is for the appraisal of the Boyceville Firehouse, and it's for our the participation in the New York City funded flood buyout program. You've all seen a copy of this appraisal. It's been on the website, and Tom is here from the fire department, and it tells us that because it's a very lengthy document, but the basic part of it is that the land has a deed restriction on it. So it is encumbered by an existing deed restriction, and as improved, the appraisal is $175,000. And a vacant lot, it would be $56,000. So I'm going to make a motion that we approve this appraisal, but I also want to explain that as this process moves further, because of contractual obligations and the deed restriction, the $175,000 is the total, and $56,000 will be deducted from that. $56,000 will go to the town of Olive, and the remainder will go to the fire department, as per the arrangements on that deal from a very long time ago. But this is just a motion to approve the appraisal so that New York City can start the process of getting a contract to sale. Can I get a motion to approve the appraisal that we received from Hudson Valley Appraisal for the New York City funded flood buyout program for the Boyceville Firehouse?
I move to approve.
And a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great. Okay. When we did our organizational meeting, we did forget to include the consultant to the bookkeeper, which is the former bookkeeper, Janice Lanzarata. She does come in and just help us along as our new bookkeeper, who's doing a great job, is learning and still learning. And we do need to bring Janice in from time to time. So I make a motion to approve to pay a consultant to the bookkeeper at a rate of $38 an hour as needed. Can I get a second for that?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in
Sounds like a good
favor?
plan.
I,
Aye. Opposed? So carried. The next thing on the agenda is we have a open development application from Simon Strauss for the planning board. And I'm gonna let, is Steve Dibble still here? Where is, oh, there he is.
He's there.
Handsome Steve there. Steve, you want to weigh in on this? Just give us a little overview on why this is coming to the town board, if you would, please.
Right, okay. So it's coming to the town board because of town law 280A. Town law 280A basically states that if you have a property that's not on a town or county or state highway, you have to conform to certain things in order to be issued a building permit. And essentially, the criteria begin with the road has to be on a filed map. But more importantly, before such permit shall be issued, such street or highway shall have been suitably improved to the satisfaction of the town board or planning board if empowered by the town board in accordance with standards and specifications approved by the town board. And I'm going to try and keep this short and sweet. There's a lot more behind this, but the net of it is that in order to essentially set up a private road for access or use a private road for access, you have some conditions that need to be satisfied. And primarily the condition is that it has to be demonstrated that you provide reasonable access, safe access for emergency vehicles, for the traffic that might be expected on that road, et cetera. So Simon is on the call, I know, but the net of it is he has a situation where, in fact, they have a private road and he is now looking at further subdividing that. And at least if you go strictly by the way the laws are written, if he were to subdivide that, the owner of the new parcel would not be able to obtain a building permit to do anything on that. There are a couple ways that this could be addressed. One is that in some towns, there is actually a specification set forward or set for private roads. So if we had a defined specification for a private road, the planning board essentially could look at this as basically any of the many other requests that come in and determine whether in fact the road that Mr. Strauss has for access to these properties complied with that. And if so, we could move on and the building department would be free to issue building permits. Absent that, which we do not currently have a private road spec in our zoning or anywhere else in the town laws that I'm aware of. Absent that, the other alternative is to essentially for the town board to approve Simon's, I'll say, neighborhood as an open development. There are some steps to go through for that to happen. But it is primarily town board led. And one of the key pieces, though, is that the town board refers it to the planning board for us to provide a report back to the town board in terms of, whether the plans are suitable for access for emergency vehicles, et cetera. So there is some discussion of this. There's a town law appendix 159A that does lay out some, I'll say, thoughts in terms of the planning board for approving this kind of a request from 1981, I think it is. So it's about 40 years old. So we'll have to look at that more closely. But so anyway, I think, Simon, you're here essentially to present a formal request to the town board for an open development declaration on the property or in that area, right?
I think Steve, you summarized that extremely well, and obviously Drew is probably about the only person here who's been this, and he may have something to add. At this stage, I think that what I would be doing is asking the town board before they can establish any such open development to refer the matter to the planning board for its advice and a report. I think that's what 280A section 4 asks for. So that's what I would be asking for today, is the town board to refer it to the planning board. Drew, anything to add from your perspective?
Yeah, because one of the things that's confusing about this is none of us, other than myself, have ever had any experience with the open development. I think when I was on the planning board, we might have done 2 or 3 open developments, but we never actually went through this particular process in the past, but I think it's the correct process. So just for the rest of the town board, we need to refer this back to the planning board. Once the planning board gets the plat all done, verify the road and access and stuff, they'll bring it back to the town board for us to basically make a motion or a resolution declaring this particular subdivision an open development. So unless there's further discussion, what I would do is I'll make a motion that we refer this back to the planning board for their input and advice before we can make a decision on the open development.
Before you act on that, I would like to make just one more comment, and just reading through this tonight, but the net of it is open development will require a secra. That secra is, according to the documentation in general, led by the town board, not the planning board, since it is a town board approval process, essentially. So there's an interesting hitch in that, and that is that I'm trying to figure out how to state this so that it makes sense. But the net of it is, if the approval of the open development is going to essentially imply the approval of Mr. Strauss's subdivision that's part of this, that secra will need to take place, in fact, before the planning board provides the town board with the report.
Steve,
Is the secret?
Wouldn't the seeker be one seeker for both the open development and the subdivision?
Well, I'll refer you to, there's a section on secret in the New York zoning law and practice report on 280A, and I know, Drew, you've seen it. I don't know how many other folks have seen it, but there is a whole discussion about when the secret would be required before the report is submitted, or whether it could be after the report is submitted. And I think the general consensus is that the secret could in fact influence the planning board's report in terms of impact and safety and impact to the environment, right? So given that it could impact the planning board's report, in general, it would appear that they're leaning toward having it done before the report is submitted.
So would that mean the planning board would then do a separate seeker just for the subdivision?
That's a very real possibility.
Sounds weird to me.
Yep.
Okay.
So what we're looking for tonight is just the motion to refer this to the planning board. If a seeker is required prior to your review of the application, then you can request that, and the town board can, or we can request it now, and
Right.
the town board can oversee that part of the process. and then submit the results of the secret to the planning board. Am I getting that correct?
Yep,
Okay,
that's the way I understand it at this point in time, so.
all right. So the motion, first of all, is to, I make a motion to move the Strauss application for an open development for review by the planning board. Can I get a second for that?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, and then I guess we should have a second motion to do the secret? Or is that just something that the planning board will require before you review it from him?
Yeah, I mean, I think you want to at least wait until Simon submitted the, reasonably final maps, et cetera, I would think, right? So I don't know,
Yes,
Simon, I think you've passed that on to some people. I don't know how broadly you've distributed the current plans.
I think I sent them around to Jim to distribute to the town board, and
Right.
you've got them as well, Steve. I haven't officially
Yep.
sent them to the planning board, but you have them and the town board has.
Okay,
I'm
But they
having a
don't-
hard- I'm having a hard time seeing how the town board can do a seeker review on the open development without having essentially a final plat prior to public hearing. You got to have all the details there so we can at least do that.
yeah, well, one of the things I will say, and I don't know this will influence what your question is, Drew, but the town board can in fact, and the planning board can in fact recommend to the town board, you can put conditions, stipulations in the approval. So,
Right.
some of the things I think are appropriate are you approve the open development, but you limit the number of lots that, for example, could be created and connected to that roadway, right? So those kinds of things, but yeah, I think you want to be as close to final in terms of the maps, the plats as you can. So,
Okay.
and Simon, I don't know where you stand in terms of, further subdivision, that kind of thing, but something to consider.
Right. I think the map, as you have it, Steve, is kind of what we're thinking of. So there are currently 3 properties that use Indian Trail. 2 I own and 1 our neighbor. And the plan would be that our other parcel, which it has access to Indian Trail, could be subdivided into 3. So a total of 6 lots would come off Indian Trail in the long term.
Right, so one of the possibilities would be that the town board, well, again, the planning board could recommend, the town board could implement a limit on how many lots, right, for example, and that would preclude the need to essentially approve the final subdivisions as part of the open development, right?
Well, yeah, because the planning board has to approve the final plat. All the town board is responsible for is declaring that subdivision an open development.
Correct.
Right.
I'm still a little bit confused on where the town board secret comes into this process. Does it make sense for us to forward this to the planning board and have this fine tuned with the maps and then have the secret and then send it back to the planning board with the secret input? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that you need to send it back, but essentially, we would perhaps hold off on quote unquote submitting our final report until we'd received the secret, right?
Right.
The declaration. So, but I mean, some of the things to consider with the secret, right, is essentially we're going to be putting in some additional road and upgrading the existing road. Those kinds of things that could, in fact, imply some environmental changes, right? But so yeah, I mean, you want to again see the plat in terms of certainly the road and how the subdivision is basically laid out.
So, Steve, let me ask you this question, because I'm still having trouble with the planning board. In order to do a subdivision has to do seeker review. And in the subdivision and the open development are connected. So what would make sense to me is that the planning board, since they have a lot of experience with this, is prepare the seeker for the town board, for a seeker for the open development and the subdivision, and the town board essentially becomes a what's the right term in the seeker world? An involved board.
Yeah,
So we both wind up approving the same seeker, is what I'm getting at.
well, I think you probably would approve the seeker in general for, I'll say, the road, and again, the area of the subdivision, right? And we would approve essentially, as you point out, if you end up doing it as two separate things, we would approve the seeker related to the actual subdivision of the property.
Okay.
But there may be other ways to do it. You know, as you pointed out, Drew, we haven't been through this, so
Right.
it may be something where we should, in fact, invite a brief discussion with council to make sure we've got this right. So.
Not a bad idea. Now I'll touch base with the county planning on how they see this also, because you don't have to refer this to the county from a subdivision point of view, right?
I don't believe so. No, it's not on a, I mean, even where you meet, it's Black Road, right? Right. So it's not on a county or state road.
Right.
It's not near the town boundary.
Right. So at least we can get the planning board started with the process, and then I'll talk to county and see if what their thoughts on the seeker, and see if we can figure out how to do that.
Yep.
Wait.
Okay.
And long term, I don't know if the board, you know, is interested in pursuing this. Drew in particular with the zoning committee, right? But it may be worthwhile looking at you know, setting a standard for a private road.
Absolutely.
Do the standards for private roads change based on the development?
I think you could certainly write a standard that depended on how many, you know, driveways, how many lots, that kind of thing, right? So
I think the main
Now it
thing,
just says that it has to be safe for fire and delivery and that sort of thing, right? With no other
Right.
specs.
and traffic, you know, based on traffic as well, but yes.
and I think there's, you know, there are certain things about grade with fire trucks, and there's also a requirement. I'm not sure where this comes from, but it's come up at the county level, where if you'll have a long road or driveway that's private like that, there needs to be a pull off every, I'll say 500 feet, so two fire trucks could pass each other.
Yeah, there's that 159A, if you look at it, and I'm not quite sure how an appendix to a town law actually works.
Yeah, me either. It's always been a gray area.
But it does, in fact, I'll say that the planning board should look at this to ensure things like that, that the road complies with the slope requirements set forth by the town road spec, right? So. And I know, Brian, you did express some concern to me about some potential drainage issues, so something to look at there as well, right?
Because that is one area we've had problems with when this is done in the past, is drainage not being handled right. I think I don't remember what the road's called now, but Leanne Way was one of them. That was a drainage problem issue.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's
just
the-
in that general area too, the lower part of Black Road, there's been drainage issues of years and years going on down below there. So certainly that would be a concern of mine, extra added drainage, and that needs to be dealt with properly.
Would there need to be a SMIP for this, for stormwater?
I think it would depend on, doesn't it depend on the area of disturbance? So,
Right.
And
That's
We'll
another
have-
thing that we would have to address.
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't think from what I saw of the plat that's proposed, I don't suspect it's gonna reach that threshold, but it does need to be looked at.
But
Yeah.
5 acres of disturbance, if I recall, something like that. It's pretty big.
yeah,
remember.
that's pretty good. Yeah.
I thought it was 2, but you could be
Is it
right.
2? Might have been thinking of tree clearing, which was more than that.
So, yeah, so this will go to the planning board. We have the
Right.
motion, we had the vote. And we will look into the secret aspects of it and how to proceed with that. And
Yep.
talk to legal counsel on the Ulster County Planning Board and get their input on it.
Yep.
Any more discussion on this? Okay, we're gonna move on then.
Thank
I
you.
just say thank you very much to the town board and also to Steve for joining us for this. Really appreciate all the time and effort you put into it. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. A quickie here, the next item on the agenda is discussing the Olive Free Library has been working on their archive of the history of the town. And they have that part of the library where they have a little museum, and they've gotten a few different grants to archive things, and they got one to digitize a lot of their material, and they've asked us if they can digitize the archives of the town records, which are kept at the town office in the vault. And they'd like to remove them, sign them out, bring them over to the library, digitize them and return them, because they have a better system set up over there for it. I don't have a problem with that. Dawn and I discussed this earlier today. She's okay with that. That seems to meet, criteria that we've worked with previously. But the library did ask if we had an interest in the town actually storing the town archives at the library, so they would be all in one place. And Dawn brought up a good point that she uses those archives throughout the year. And having them readily at hand is a big advantage for her. So, but some things might be better off brought over there. So what I'd like to do is make a motion to allow the Olive Free Library to digitize the town archive records at the location of the library. And then we can hold off on the other aspect of it and discuss that later, and have some more conversations with Chrissy over at the library to see what they're interested in and what we're interested in keeping, and see if we even want to move along the other approach. Any conversation about this? Anybody want to bring up anything? Dawn, do you have something to say?
Just real quick, what archives are we talking about here? Pretty much everything that Dawn's got, or?
Yes,
Thanks.
yes. Photographs, maps, records, record keeping books. Dawn, would you want to weigh in on that a little?
Well, I only got a chance to talk to Melissa briefly about this because it's, it came up right at the worst time of the year for me with taxes and everything. She was in last week, took a look, and I sent her the index that Sylvia had compiled of what's in there. But there is a lot of other things, and I'm not quite sure if she's just going to do what Sylvia indexed, or if she wants to take all the ledgers and stuff that are in there also. So that's something that me and her will have to talk about, what exactly she wants to take. I don't have a problem with them taking them to the library. She just signs them out. And then when they're done, they bring them back and we sign them back in. That way we know where everything is. But again, I have not had a chance to really sit with Melissa to talk to her about what she wants to take at what point in time. So that's something that's going to be ongoing. I know their grant, they have it to get it done here in January and the beginning of February, which is my worst part of the year. But I've only spoken to her briefly about it, so.
I'd be interested in knowing what sort of if it was digitized, what sort of remote access you would have to records that the library has.
I don't know. Again, I have not had a chance to
Right.
sit and talk with her, but maybe David or Marianne has an answer for you on that because they're on the board.
Marianne
see
isn't
what they
now,
have.
but
Oh.
it's there's a system that we've bought into that indexes everything and allows searching and retrieving documents. So they would be available.
Right, the question,
So-
I mean, does the system allow remote access?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know if all of it would be. I think that's a decision made while indexing everything.
Right.
But that's my my understanding of it. I'll know a little more tomorrow, meeting with Chrissy.
I know Melissa said there is some stuff that's duplicated in between us and them. So they'll have to go through that stuff too, and sort out what they want to do. She's welcome to, I told her she's welcome to come back anytime in the afternoon. That's a better time frame for us in the afternoons. So we'll have to see where they want to take it from there. So you have a motion on at this time. I need to see what.
So
you're
can
gonna
I
do
get a
with that.
second on the motion to digitize the records?
I'll second.
All in favor?
I'll second.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
So carried. And we can discuss, further down the line, once we get a little more clarity in your workload lessons after tax season, and we can talk about that. Great. Thank you. The next issue is in response to the correspondence we got, and also something I was thinking about as well, and talking to people in the last since I've been on the town board, which is the ongoing problem of communicating to the public of the things we're doing in the town. Some things are informational, some things are notices about events, some things are cultural notices, some things are emergency notices. This has become even more important in the time of COVID, when we have the opportunity to have test kits available and masks and supplies. Last year we had some supplies. This year we had some supplies with test kits, and it's really hard to get the information out there and manage it. And we don't have a local newspaper that many people read. So the idea of having the town emergency alert system has come into discussion again. The last time we discussed this, the county was looking at doing something, and we kind of held off to see what the county would do. And we haven't heard anything about the county. So Dawn, you want to weigh in on this?
I do. We first brought it up when I went up to Shandaken to look at their system, which is a very good system. And it was not that expensive, and Sylvia tabled that, and because the county was bringing theirs in. I
Right.
still have some of that paperwork, and I have to say that when I'm signed on to Shandaken's emergency system, and I get text messages, I get emails, and I get 3 forms of ways you can get information from them. So they'll leave me a voicemail, they'll leave me a text, they'll email me, or one of those 3. And I have to say, I get all of their stuff, and I did bring it up. I do have some of the information still, but I believe it wasn't that expensive back then when I brought it to the board. And it was tabled at that time because the county was going to give it to us free instead of paying for the $1,200 or something it was going to cost to do it.
So since then, I've spoken to the company, which is the program that Shandaken uses is called Swift Reach. That company was bought by another company. I forget the name of them. I have it somewhere. Wave, anyway, I reached out to them and I have a meeting scheduled for later this week with them to discuss what's available. My initial discussion with them was that they no longer have that product that they sell, that Shandaken bought into for $1,200 a year, that we can be looking at it being $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a year. So I will get back to the board when I get more information. I think it's a great idea. It's something long overdue in the town. And I will look into the 435-page ARPA document and see if that can be funded through that, if it meets the qualifications of that. So
Look at this
that's kind of-
also when I was on the tech committee, and I didn't look at Shandaken's, but Marbletown has one, and I'm not very impressed with its management. It's kind of clunky, and the messages I get from it aren't super well formatted or useful.
Yes,
So-
I spoke to Joyce about this program and she was very enthusiastic about it and reiterated what you just said, Dawn, that it works really well and you can message on different platforms and there's a lot of flexibility on who gets messages, what they get, what platform they get. So what they were telling me is that what they're offering now is even more enhanced than what is out there that Shandaken's using. So let me report back to the board after I speak to them and get an idea of what they're offering and what the pricing is. And
good.
Joyce is chatting with us. She's on. Hey, Joyce.
On.
She's
Hey, how you
chatting
doing?
with us and she's saying that she will help us set it up.
Oh, terrific.
Hey, guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, Joyce.
Hey, how you doing? So can I speak or I don't want to cut you out
Sure,
of
come
your
on,
meeting?
chime in.
I don't do many Zoom meetings. We have ours live still, sorry. But yeah, that has helped us immensely during COVID. As you know, Jim, we talked about this a few times. And it's helped us for many things. And we have about 20% of our people here that don't go online at all. So we reach a lot of seniors, we reach a lot of people that are shut-ins or whatever. We don't even have a cell tower here, but we get the info out. And this was the best thing for the buck. You know, I mean, it's a great system. As you know, I've told you many times, it's wonderful. So I would help you in any way I can. And I know there are a lot of people who contact me from Olive that are on our system. So like I said, the voice ones are great for people that don't go online and have a telephone. Everybody has a telephone. And if you need any help, just let me know.
Very good. Thank you, Joyce.
Anytime, Jim.
I did get a chat here from Diana, our assessor who's on the tech committee. She said that she worked a little bit on this last year and that they might require now more residents than we have. But when I discussed that with the initial sales call, he asked me how many we had and he didn't seem to think that was a problem. So let's see, maybe they've changed their policy. I'll know more at the end of this week and get back to everybody.
Yeah, Jim, and also we'll talk more because I did contact somebody that I know that has the system and we talked about your town and I got a better price, about half of what you found.
Yeah, they
So,
didn't give
we'll
us
talk
anything
more.
specific yet, so I'm
Yeah,
kind of.
so I'm trying to help you out, look out for you guys down there. Hey, we gotta stick together up here in the mountains, so,
I appreciate it,
You
Joyce.
know.
Thank you.
okay, you take care.
Yep, you too. Thank you. All right.
Marianne
so,
has her hand up if
Who has
you
their
two
hand
said-
up?
Marianne does.
Marianne? Okay, where is she? She wrote the letter with Linda there.
Hi, Jim. Hi, town
Marion.
board. I just, where is the county on this? Have they basically dismissed the whole emergency notification or,
I haven't heard a peep about that.
Oh,
okay. So we should pursue it maybe on the county level as well?
No, I like going with what we're doing right now. My
Okay.
experience with working with the county on these things hasn't been great.
Okay. The other issue, though, is not just emergency. I think that's a good place to start. But I really feel like we have to, have a plan that includes more than just that. And if there is money available, possibly grant money, I don't, as you said, it's very specific, the grant money coming through. But, I think it's something that the town should look at in terms of strategizing the other aspects of this, how to get information out to town residents. It's really a problem in this age of, not having newspapers and only social media and the people that are not on social media And there's a lot of wrong information on social media. So I really would like the town to look at this closer.
I think, Mary Ann, the system can be used for just general information also, besides just emergency stuff.
Yeah, they call them emergency notification, but it's not limited to that.
Right.
Good.
No, it's not.
Good.
It has, it's very customizable to what you want to put out there in different categories and who wants to sign into what categories. It's extremely flexible from my first conversation with them. So yes, you're right, Mary Ann, and we are right now getting ready to start our Facebook page. We're having a little issues with an existing page that we're trying to clarify. And I've already had a meeting with Amanda Winnie, who will be overseeing social media on the types of information that we get, where we can get it from. So that stuff will feed into this as well, from all the different agencies we use and social groups in the town and so forth. So we're working on it from that aspect, and I think it'll segue nicely into some kind of alert system.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. So I'll get back to the town board on that. The next thing we have is short-term rental recommendations. Let me dig that up. All right. As everyone knows, we have a zoning committee that we started 2 years ago, and they have been looking at our codes, and we've asked them to look at the short-term rental situation and how to approach that in our zoning code. And they have made some recommendations. We put forth we introduced a law, and the law is under discussion, and the zoning committee has come back based on some input we got from public hearing, based on the input we've gotten from correspondence that people have sent to us. All of the correspondence sent on STRs is shared with the zoning committee, the town board, and archives, so we can refer to it. It's very helpful. We've learned a lot about STRs in the last few months. And we had some questions that came up, and I'm going to let Drew go through this. He's been kind of handling this with the zoning committee. He's the liaison with the zoning committee.
So just refreshing everybody's memory, we did have a public hearing on the STR law number 4 from 2021. We had a significant amount of public input, both verbal and in writing. So I think it was back in their October, November timeframe that the zoning committee tried to go through those and come up with potential changes to our short-term rental law. But since this law actually belongs with the town board, what I wanted to do is get an input from the town board on some of the things that came up in the public comments as to direction. Some of them are easy, some of them are not. So before the zoning committee kind of does a rewrite or changes to the document, I wanted to make sure the town board was more or less on board with what we're thinking. And Vicki, since you participated in this, if I say something that you don't think is right, please speak up. So we did have an awful lot of comments. Unfortunately, there wasn't a huge amount of comments that were specific to suggested changes to the law, but there were some that are fairly easy to deal with. So I sent you an email with some of the suggestions coming out of this committee, and I just want to get more or less the town board's input and or agreement that we should move forward with those kind of changes. So the first one was in 114.3b, where we had the mileage where the host that would be taking care of the STR had to be within 10 miles. There were several suggestions, and we came up with a number of 30 miles to change that to. That would allow somebody from, say, Kingston to be able to take care of STRs in Olive. It would also allow anybody within Olive to take care of an STR within anywhere within Olive and a neighboring town. So we thought changing it to 30 miles would make good sense. So,
Can we discuss each one of those and get the board opinion on them? So we can
Yeah.
give you some kind of like direction on which way to go. So I looked at that one. I don't have a problem with that one at all. I think that one makes perfect sense, especially with the difficulty in people who do the service jobs at these places and the difficulty in housing for people that work for the kind of money that these places that they make working at these places. So housing becoming a problem, I think this is a good thing to expand the area for the mileage on 114.3B. Anyone else?
I think it's fine. So I haven't read it in a while. We still have a response time listed there, right? Like 2 hours or something like that.
I don't know that, I don't remember that being in there.
Yeah, there is.
I also just read the Saugerties one, so I'm confusing them because that one did definitely have it. I think something like that may be more applicable than the miles itself.
I would have to look at that because what we're describing here is in a definition. So let me look through there. You don't know where that is in the law, do you, David?
No, I'd have to go look again. And as I said, I might be confusing it with the, I just read the Saugerties one and that was in there. And so I'm trying to remember back to ours.
I think, keep in mind, one of the things that you got to keep in the back of your mind is any of the regulations we put in this is how are you going to enforce it? And to some degree, it's easier to enforce a mileage than it is a time. But or at least know that somebody's within that time, that distance.
But would the property owner then, if not within the distance, have to have a property manager able to respond?
Well, yeah, we're thinking in terms of, in this case, we're talking, there was another, this is kind of a separate thing, but one of our law, proposed law, kind of confused owner and host. So we got to clear those up. But what we're thinking about here is where the owner isn't actually on the property. They're in New York City or wherever they normally live, and they're renting out, say, their second home. If they need to have a host that's within, say, 30 miles to take care of issues and stuff, take care of the property. So any other comments from the board on that one? Okay.
Okay with it.
Oh, actually, our regulation in what section is this? It's section C under general permit regulations, number 4. At the end of that, it does say the owner or host shall be able to respond in person within 1 hour.
Within 1 hour. Okay, that's tight.
Okay.
All right.
Just
Good.
some clarification on that.
Great.
So is there any problem with us going to 30 miles?
Oh,
Okay,
that's reasonable out here.
all right, I think we can work with that.
All right. So the next one, which is we're talking about changing the full-time residence to 240 or more days instead of 180. So this gets to where it gets a little tricky. Trying to define owner occupied, where the owner is essentially on the property. You know, somebody that lives in the town of Olive and they want to rent out part of their house or an accessory or something. So trying to define what that is a little tricky. And it's complicated by the fact that and this is another issue, but I just wanted to explain it before we talk about this one, is the county planning board didn't want to see us put a cap on owner occupied properties. So they're kind of, from the county's point of view, they want to encourage people that live here to have STRs, and I'll say to some degree discourage people that don't actually live here having STRs. So what we did is we said anybody that lives 240 days in the town would be called a full-time resident, owner occupied, whatever you want to call it, instead of 180 days. So it basically means we're trying to define where somebody lives here essentially most of the time. but it gives the freedom for somebody that lives here, you know, except for January and February, and go to Florida for 2 months or something like that,
Or Kentucky.
or Kentucky.
I wonder who said that.
Hey,
Hey, Joe. You know, I don't want to open this up to a lot of discussion, but Joe, what are your thoughts on that?
I actually didn't hear the whole complete first statement, so I was kind of absorbing what you were talking about with the mile radius and stuff. I've had an Airbnb in my house for, it'll be 6 years next September, and it's my primary residence. And I feel that the way this is going forward, it's going to be really, really restrictive in my case, because as he just mentioned, you know, I do have a farm in Kentucky, and I was supposed to be there now, and I was supposed to be there in September, and I was supposed to be there in October. So I've been here since July, and I wanted to split my time, half of my life with my fiance down there and half of my life with my family and home in New York. And if you're doing, you know, 240 days, I'm just wondering where that figure comes up with, and how restrictive is this? Because I quit my full-time job just to, and purchase new property across the street from my regular house, just so that this is my primary source of income. And I've been a resident here since 2003. So I'm a little concerned, I have to say.
I understand.
Okay. What does the board think about this?
How do you
Is that-
how do you qualify that a resident is here for 240 days?
You mean, how do you prove it? It's a
Yeah.
good question. And no matter what number you put in there, it's something that would be difficult. The idea was originally the 180 days came with thinking, okay, anybody that lives here more than half the year is a full-time resident or owner occupied, whatever you want to call it. But when the county more or less wanted to separate out owner occupied versus non-owner occupied, it gets a little tricky. So we wanted to bump it up a little bit so that we were dealing with people that live here as their primary resident. And I'll say that the opposite of that is people that have a second home here, live in New York City, come up on occasion and want to rent it out when they're not here as a STR. I'm trying to separate those two types of rentals.
I think there's something significant here too. Hang on a second, Joe. Let us talk about this for a minute. And that is that what we're talking about here is consecutive days, not days.
No,
total.
I would take that word out of the code, the consecutive.
Oh, okay, well, you didn't say that.
Well, I was hoping you weren't going to read it that close.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, take consecutive out, because first of all, there's no way for us to know that, but it makes it more difficult for people to go on 2-week vacations and stuff. So
Yeah, and then people go away for the weekend. I mean,
yeah,
I don't know if I'm in my house that long.
oh, you wouldn't qualify.
And I haven't been out in 2 years.
Okay.
Any other comments on this one?
And one other thing that kind of goes along with this, the county, we had restricted how many days people could rent for, the 180 days and 26 weeks. The county's required modification was you do not have that restriction on owner occupied properties. So people that live here full-time that are renting would have no restriction on how many days or weekends they could do that by the county.
If it's on their property, right?
Yeah, we'd have to think about that, because if you live here, you can actually have two, one on your property and one somewhere else.
Right. One sec, Joe. But I just want to get some clarity on that. If you have two properties and the residency requirement would stay the same, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
If you are a resident and you have,
Two
what about
properties.
if you're a resident and you have two distinct ones off your property? Is it the same?
I think
That's where
the intent from the county's requirement would be, yeah, that if they're living here, they have no restrictions on number of days they could rent it for.
How many bill-
But we can talk
Okay.
about that, but because we can always override the county if we don't agree with it.
Right. Let me hear from Joe for a second. And Joe, I'm trying to keep this, generally, we
I
would
know.
like, I don't want it to go into a back and forth thing. So if you have a comment to make, we can take it in and then we'll
Yeah,
respond.
I
that
wasn't
way.
even going to comment until the very end of all the lists that you wanted to go through, because some of my questions might be answered in the next couple things. But I just wanted to make sure that he's not just talking about one building, because like I just bought the house down at the rail trail on purpose for this. So I have multiple buildings that are short-term
So,
rentals.
yes, and what we're looking at is, I think the intent of this whole regulation is to try to encourage people to live in town, to be able to supplement their income or make their income off it. But at a certain point, you become a larger business. And that's what we're trying to figure out, like
Yeah.
where we want to draw that line of encouragement, but yet we don't want multiple, we don't, you could, if you were a billionaire, you could buy every house in town and, and rent them out as STRs, if you wanted to put that on steroids. So where do we draw that line is what I'm getting at. And I think that part of this is trying to navigate, and it's always we're not going to appease anyone. People are going to be mad at us when we're done with this. I guarantee it, because there are a lot of people who don't want any STRs in town. Your situation, I think, is fairly unique because you live in town and you have a few.
And it could be, I mean, this particular law is really geared to what Jim just said. That doesn't necessarily say that like the property you have across from the rail trail, you did a site plan for that and whatever, and got a planning board approval. That may be the other option for things like that, or for B&Bs where there's 3 or 4 rooms in the B&B. That's a separate type of use.
That's a really good
Law is
point.
intended.
Well, and just to point out, there's also the clause that grandfathers existing Airbnbs in, right, Drew? So if somebody's already there, the intent is not to immediately shut them down.
Right.
So getting back to the question at hand, this is why I don't want too much discussion, because it really we get off track. We'll be here for 6 hours. Do we want to change that full-time residency to 240 from 180? Any more discussion from the board? And I know Scott was asking about enforcement, and everything that we do in this has questions of how or not, whether or not we can enforce it. So to me, it's more of a question of, do we want to do this? And we'll deal with the enforcement. Dawn Marie made a good point in chat. It's, if there's primary residents, then they vote here. And if they are not registered as town voters, then they are not here primary. Just an idea for thought. I looked into this, and residency is ridiculously difficult. So we could also start looking at, you need a driver's license here. You need to vote, be registered to vote. Not everyone is registered to vote. It gets crazy.
And there's people that are only here 3-4 months a year that are registered to vote here because the vote means more here than it does in the city.
Right.
And Diana makes another point in chat, and she says that voting registration, and if they do not receive any exemptions, they are not residents. So the exemptions, a star exemption, has qualifications for residency. I'm presuming almost everyone has a basic star, but they do not qualify if it's not their primary. And New York State verifies this. So that's a good point too, in terms of how do we enforce it. And very often with enforcement, we do what we can, and when it's a problem, then we see it. If somebody complains.
And we have record of star, right? Because of taxes.
Yes.
So we would actually be able to verify that ourselves.
Yes.
And keep in
I like
mind,
that.
Good point, Diana. Thank you.
Good point. And also keep in mind, when we pass this law sometime this year, I hope, it's not cast in stone. If we wind up with problems with it, we always have the freedom to go and fix the problems. So don't necessarily treat everything we're doing as though it's there forever.
So, and getting back to the residency requirements of how many days, is the question to raise it to 240, or is it something that's being recommended by the zoning committee?
I'm going to say a little of both. We were trying to separate out in other words, if somebody lives here 180 days, are they full-time resident or not? And we figured if you raised it up a bit, then it kind of it made it clearer who's actually living here full-time and who's not. Because we're removing restrictions off of those type of people, and we need to separate them from people that are not living here.
So to the point that was made by Dawn Marie and Diana, would it be a problem to leave it at 180 and then require these other things for verification? I always feel like, you know, and to kind of to Scott's point is like, how do you verify that? How do you enforce it? Well, by changing the number of days doesn't seem to make it more enforceable. Well, to me, I think I'm fine with the 180 plus these other things that we're talking about. You know, other verifications. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah.
I don't think our measurements are going to be very accurate. So if we left it at 240, we're probably talking about as little as 180 before we would be able to react to it.
So, I mean, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
You're a little bit low. You can speak up a little.
Yeah, we had not discussed the residency question around the star exemption, for example. And I think that if that's added in as that 180 days is fine if we verify the owner has a star exemption. That would make sense to me.
The other question I have on that, can you get a star exemption on a second property?
No, I don't think so.
So they would
And
need
it says absolutely no.
So they need a star exemption on their primary residence.
Right.
Then do we need a date thing at all where their star is their primary? Because the date thing, as Scott says, is gonna be hard to enforce. The star thing we have. We can just look that up.
Point.
So Drew, do you have enough comments here to go back to the zoning committee and try to look at this a little bit more?
Oh, yeah.
Dennis says to keep it.
Well, let's take a look at it.
Diana, why don't you, can we unmute Diana? She's on the zoning
She can unmute
committee.
herself.
There we go. I'd like to hear her comments. You're on, Diana. Of course, we can't hear you.
Not hearing you.
Yeah, too.
Oh, man, you're both in Sampsonville. You'll never
Oh,
get it.
geez. Got to do something about the Samsonville hole.
Internet connection, can you hear me?
We
Yeah,
can hear you, but you're
barely.
very low. Can you get closer to your microphone, please?
Oh, okay. I understand the idea of it being difficult to enforce. However, in anything, whether it be, the instructions for the basic star or for any other thing that you have to complete, there's usually where there's a residency requirement, that language is still in there as a guide frame. And I think even though you may get some people who try to, slink through, I think that's ultimately that wording in there is helpful for people to just take a second look and be like, okay, well, yes or no, that does not apply to me. I just think it's good to have in there.
You don't think it's redundant since they have to have that to get the star in the first place?
I think it's important, but there's also people who have properties who get the star and then they leave. So it may take a while for New York State to catch up with their income tax. So like you figure if they're reviewing income tax from 2020, they may have been a resident in 2020 when they filed their income tax, but now they're not there anymore. I mean, maybe they came up in 2020 and they made it their primary residence during COVID, but then they went back to the city or wherever they went. And they just kept that. And so it would take a year or two for that to catch up, maybe.
I'd like to say that there are going to be some people that try to get around any regulation. It's going to be really hard to enforce everybody all the time and be 100% accurate. And
Right.
that's true in everything, whether you're speeding in your car or it just, there are people that are going to do that. And we should try and reduce it as much as possible, but we're not going to get 100% results. Unfortunately.
For the board itself, are we more in favor of the 180 or the 240 days? Actually, I wanted to ask,
Or some other.
Diane,
or
before you
some-
answer that, I wanted to ask Diana what she was in favor of. She likes having the days in, but Diana, are you in favor of the 240?
We lost you again.
Lost in Sampsonville.
Good to
She
know
might
it's
have
not just me.
I'm like in the laptop. Can you hear me?
There you go.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
hear you
now
now.
we can hear you.
Okay. I am in favor of 240 because I think it sets a good standard. But I've done lots of research and seen other applications and other things that cite things like 183 days. I've seen things that say like odd numbers in the 240s. So I would be comfortable either way. But I think that we need to put something in there. Like we can't, I think we shouldn't take it out altogether.
So 183 is 1 day more than half a year. Right? Unless it's a leap year.
Yeah.
Well, it's so many things, but whatever New York State's standard is I think what we should probably stick with.
Do you know that standard?
I mean, if you give me 2 seconds, I could probably Google it.
And we'll give you 2 seconds. How's that? Does that mean we won't be able to hear you?
No.
All right.
I mean, I'm all for finding a compromise. We could bring it down to 200 and maybe that will suffice. And if we need to make a change on it, we can.
I was gonna say, there's nothing sacred about 240.
On New York State's website, it says New York State resident or domicile for New York State spend 184 days or more. So that's for New York State in general, but 184 seems to be the standard for that.
Good with
I'm
that.
fine. I'm fine with that.
All right, we'll do that. Look at that.
Anybody else? Everybody like 184?
And add the star as well.
Sure.
I like it.
Yes.
Scott?
Good.
Okay. Let's move on to the next one.
Okay. It should get easier than harder. Go as we go. Okay, the next one. We had put in there on about a cap on the number of STRs that would be allowed in town. So the county's required recommendation is no cap on owner occupied STRs. And it's okay to put a cap on non-owner occupied or non-residents. And we had put a specific, so that was the county requirement. So that's not too difficult to do.
There's a difference between full-time residents and owner occupied, which is.
Well, we're essentially saying the same thing. We need to clarify that in the law, but I'll say owner occupied and full-time resident needs to be the same thing. So we'll have to clarify that wording in our document.
But if a resident can have more than one property, they can't be owner occupied in
Right.
properties.
Well, that's why I think we probably have to get away from that term and go more to full-time resident.
Yes.
Okay. Now, the other change that we're recommending, when we talked about a cap, we actually put a percentage in the law. And I know some people objected to that. So what we're recommending is we don't put a percentage in there. We just say that the town board will set a percentage based on the total number of housing stock in the town. If they're in other words, the town board has the right to set a cap on non-resident STRs if they see the need to do that. So that would be in 114.4K. And just removing the percentage there. So it's not, the town board's not tied into any particular percentage. Does that make sense to everybody?
Well, I can say that I like having that cap on non-residents only. And I like having it reviewed. I don't know if it needs to be reviewed annually, but I could see a situation where we have a substantial amount of STRs. What did we see in that report we got that was on the county that was over
It was
on
119 at that point in time.
119? And we might find that this is just a little too much, and we might want to bring it down a little, bring it up a little. But we might find that the real estate market could change tremendously in the next, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years. And we need the flexibility to be able to kind of throttle that as we feel necessary. We might find that, the economy goes down and people are just stuck with houses and can't sell them. And, anything could happen in the real estate market. So I like to have the board having the flexibility to make those adjustments as they see needed.
Oh, yeah, not taking that out, just taking,
Okay.
just taking the percentage out.
I don't like,
So you're not tied into a particular percentage, you can set that
Oh,
percentage.
yeah, no, I agree with
yeah,
that.
I don't like hard numbers in the law generally. It's too inflexible.
Right, okay, so those are two pretty easy. Okay, the next one to me is easy. We need to expand our definition of LLCs to include things like partnerships and things like that, and still eliminating commercial LLCs. There's wording out there in several towns that works very well. So we're going to try to expand that and make it clearer that people with LLCs to protect their own property is okay. We're just trying to eliminate commercial LLCs where a company buys up, 7 or 8 houses in town and runs an LLC, renting them out all the time. That's what we're trying to eliminate. So I didn't provide you with that wording, but it's fairly straightforward. Okay, the next issue.
Hang on a second. I got a question about that. Is there a way to limit, to define commercial LLCs versus quote unquote normal LLCs? I don't know what.
Well, I don't have the wording exactly with me right now. I'll send it to you, what other towns have used. And it's almost the same in several of them. And see whether that meets your question or not.
Okay.
I think one of the clauses is that the owners of the LLC not have a share in more than one.
I think that's right.
Right,
Yeah.
so that you don't have somebody that's set up 20 different LLCs. So
Oh,
that they're
I see.
essentially hiding the fact they're running 20 B&Bs, right?
Right.
But
So-
would this necessarily
Trust me.
limit someone like Joe, who has a few properties in town and may want to set up an LLC? Is that limiting the number that they can have in the town
No.
if they're a resident?
Of one
No.
house.
that-
Yeah, it's still
No.
the residents in one, and except for
Okay.
what's grandfathered in.
And it's still like a single person LLC type thing.
Okay.
Okay. All right, the next one
And,
is,
and I have another question about that because it just came into my mind. These, someone like Joe or anybody who has more than one STR, if they are grandfathered in, is that transferable to a new owner? That's a question I'd like to put before the zoning.
okay,
I don't think it should be. I think it's non-transferable rights.
I think it should not be transferable
Yeah, to get a new license,
I agree.
new permit.
because it sort of defeats the purpose.
Yeah, yeah.
The whole idea with the grandfather is not to cause hardship to the people that are already doing this, but to enable you to gradually move back away from that.
Right. And what I'm getting at, I hate to keep using Joe as an example, but she's the only one here that we can beat on. So no, but she has an interesting situation. She has several, and she's already made this commitment to them. She's lives in town, and what's to say in 5 years, Joe says, I'm done with this. I love farming. I'd like to sell them all, and each one becomes an individual STR. And I don't think we're saying that's allowable here.
No,
Okay.
no.
Joe has her 2 fingers up Let's hear what Joe has to say.
What if it's transferable to my heirs and it has nothing to do with selling it? It's to keep it in my family if I die.
Well, that's an interesting question.
Wouldn't that be part of how you set up your LLC?
I don't have an LLC currently. I'm just a sole proprietor.
But you might want to.
Well,
It's on my to-do list.
but
Then you get into
that's also in the
if they
wording.
live in town.
And the
You know,
wording we're putting into and it's LLC, the sole proprietor was another option in there also.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
it doesn't keep you from not doing that, so.
Right.
Right, but if you want to set it up so that it would be, so to speak, grandfathered in, there
Yeah.
might be a way to put that into the terms of an LLC, that your heirs to the LLC, it's still the same LLC. It's not.
Good point.
You should probably talk to.
But would potentially have different owners, right? I mean, it'd be LLC, but be different partners in the LLC.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess the question there becomes when it comes up for renewal, is that going to be allowed? I don't know.
I think you need to talk to a lawyer about how to set up an LLC that would do what you want it to do, if that's possible.
Well, I think one of the things that was said was, does a sale trigger a change in
Right.
the status of the Airbnb as opposed to, an inheritance? And I think that's interesting. An inheritance, though, if someone were to inherit your Airbnbs, God forbid, Joe, I'm not trying to, I hate putting you in this situation. They would have to meet the same requirements of residency that the previous owner of that had. So I think it's the language may need to be more triggered towards sale and transferability.
Yes.
Of sale.
I agree. Thank you.
All right. God, I got Joe.
You can
agreeing
throw
with
me
you.
in there anytime you want.
I will. Don't worry. We've got plenty more of these to go
Okay,
through.
so we only got a few more to go, and two of them are going to require discussion. So I'm going to skip one or two and then come back to it. So one of the other changes was the date. We had put a specific date in the law as to when it took effect, or when.
Yes.
So
We do the one before that? We did, right?
I'm going to come back to it.
Okay. All right.
I want to try to get through all but two. So what we're proposing to do, instead of having a specific date, is we have the date of which the law is actually adopted by the town board, which makes a lot more sense since we don't know when that's going to happen.
I think that makes total sense. I have no problem with that.
All right, the one below that one.
Now, does anyone else have an issue with that one?
No.
Okay.
The one below that, 114.4K, we already talked about cap on the non-resident and no cap on owner occupied, and we just removed the percentage number in there. Okay.
Yep.
And the next one, we're trying to make it a little bit easier on the owners of the STR. So we talked about either having a biannual permit instead of an annual, or having a biannual inspection report instead of annual. So the zoning committee really didn't want to do away with the annual permit because it can be fairly easy to renew it from a workforce point of view. So what we decided to do is suggest a biannual inspection report. So every 2 years, you need to have your property inspected.
Oh, okay. Okay. Every 2 years.
Every 2 years, not twice a year, every 2 years.
I read that as twice a year, and I was like, that sounds crazy. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Vicky. All right. The only thing about that is the only thing that I was worried about that is I'm trying to find some stability in how we will do these inspections, and not being doing it every other year. You're going to have. Is that going to mean we're going to have years with less inspections or no inspections, or it's not going to be set on that every 2 years everyone gets inspected as the things come up and down?
But when we start out, that's what would happen. But over time, it should start spreading out.
I'm not in favor of that. I'm in favor of annual so we can have some stability in the process of inspection for the building department. You know, I think that, you know, one, we have a very overburdened building department as
But
it is.
Drew, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're thinking the inspections are going to be carried out by a designated set of third parties providers.
Correct.
Right.
That's the intent of the law.
Well,
So
the
it'd just be
the
clerical.
inspections, the town board can decide who we want to have inspecting this. And it might, you know, we haven't looked at that deeply, whether it's, if we know we have 119 of them and they need to get inspected and it costs $100, we're going to be making a certain amount of money, which I don't have the brain power to calculate that quickly.
No. We weren't doing it that way. We were basically making the owner of the STR responsible for hiring and getting the inspection done for the building department to review.
And we would provide a list of suggested inspectors or approved
Right.
inspectors.
Oh.
And a
that's
checklist of
the-
what needed to be inspected.
Yeah.
Right.
So not be a burden on the building department. That's the idea.
I
Yeah, it
see.
would just be the clerk that would have some additional work.
Right, but we don't get the fee for the inspection.
No, but we
No.
get the registration fee to get the license for the.
Right.
STR.
Yeah, one of the things that I've asked Diana and Annie to try to do is work up the application form, and the other thing we have to do is work up the fee structure that we want for an STR.
Okay.
That's something with the town board needs to discuss at a later date.
Yes.
Do we know that there's enough of these inspection services out there working independently that would qualify for this?
No.
There's a lot of home inspection services out there.
Well,
Right,
John-
but there's also certifications that need to be had
Right.
for building inspections
Right.
of egress and things like that that are different than building inspections. So I think it's something we want to look into a little before we make a definitive.
Well, one of the things that I asked John to do, John Ingrams to do, and Dominic, is to put together a list of those type of people. And then we could look at that list and see if they qualify. But I would think it would be people like Dominic who do it, you know, do home inspections. That's the type of person you want. It's people that would normally do a home inspection.
Okay, well, they're
Right, you
out
can do it
there.
on the side.
Right.
I
They're
think-
out there. I am really trying to make sure that that if we put any burden on our building department, that it's not even about money at this point. It's really about time. You know,
Yeah.
we have to look at in the future, we're going to have to figure out a way to restructure the building department and that whole system. But I don't want to put any more burden on them with what they're doing now. It's really.
Well, that was part of the reason for why we didn't want the building department to be responsible for the inspections, because we figured with, 100 and something STRs, they'd never be able to do it. We'd have to hire people to do it. So
Right. And my point is you could hire somebody on a per diem, per inspection basis and pay them a percentage of that. And they could do all the paperwork and file it through and not have to burden the building department at all. It's something to think about. I'd like you to reconsider that.
Okay. All right.
I mean, I kind of like the other way too, but I'm not sold on one or the other.
At $100, we're still only talking about $10,000 or so to pay this person.
Right.
Yeah.
And
So-
if the inspection's $100 and we give them $80 out of the 100 and use 10 for filing fees, that person's making $8,000 for what could be several months of work or, at their own time and leisure, we'd have to look at the numbers a little more closely, but I could go either way on it. But my initial thought was we were going to keep it in-house and be able to look at it that way. But if it can be done with an outside agency without bearing any more burden on that building department, then I'm for it as well. But I would like to consider both options a little more.
Okay.
I'd also like
So-
to know what fees home inspectors charge.
Yeah, I don't know what they charge for this.
$100.
This is a pretty straight walkthrough, of making sure egress, making sure things aren't blocking things that need to be clear, making sure the signage is up, all the things that you have in this law, making sure that they're adhered to, and that more difficult things and why it might be to consider is a lot of these things have come up. Are they meeting the specs for additional people in the facility? Are they adding rooms to their building without looking at water and septic? And is a third party going to be able to look at that? Some of these, I suspect, have it, you know.
I would just like to add one thing to Jim's point, is that I think it should be done annually. From a firefighter's perspective, and Tom could tell you, things change quickly when a homeowner wants to maximize their dollar. And, you know, if doors are not properly maintained, where they don't open, or emergency exits aren't marked, and CO detectors aren't operational, smoke detectors aren't operational, you can't wait for 2 years for that to happen. That's got to be maintained on an annual basis, so people
Okay.
do the right thing. I'm
I
just
think
adding
you're
that
right,
2
Gene.
cents.
I agree with Gene, and I agree on the annual. And, you know, we want to make this easy. We want to make this simple, but we want to make it safe. We want to make it safe for our first responders going in these places, and for people with water and septic and all that other business. If you're going to be doing this and you're making money on it, that's one of the costs you have to have.
Okay. All right, so let's back up to my number 5, which this particular one, where we have in our code, proposed code, 180 days max and 26 weekends max. This particular restriction on STRs probably drew the most comments from those people that either contemplated or are running STRs. And my initial suggestion to the zoning committee was, well, let's just take those out, because I know other towns have done the same thing. And I'm going to say probably at least half the zoning committee was, no, we need limits in there. So what we did suggest is delete the 26 weekend requirement and just stick with 180 days. I'm pretty sure that from the input that we've gotten from a lot of STR owners, even 180 days is a bit of a problem for them. But I wanted to hear what the town board's ideas on that, if you have any.
So when I think
Kind
of
of
this,
actually,
go ahead, David.
I'm just curious how much occupation, what the occupation rates are. And maybe Joe could actually attest that as well. You know, are these places full for 250 days here?
It comes, most of the comments relative to this, particularly 180 days, came from what I believe are second homeowners that feel like they need to be able to rent the place out in order to make it viable for them financially to actually have the house in the first place. And they felt like 180 days was too restrictive for that particular scenario.
Yeah, my neighbors are only up every 3 weeks, so that would be, you know, for a weekend. So for them to have that house and do that, they're not doing that. But if they were to do that, they'd need a lot more days than that.
Right. So I mean, but Ed Maldonado was very, very firm. I mean, he doesn't like the idea of having a house next to his where it's rented out, I'll say 9-10 months out of the year by all kinds of different people.
If you only did 3-day weekends, so they, for example, they would be full every weekend. It'd just be, you know, now that we took the weekends out.
But I think that part of the thinking, Drew, was essentially that if we're trying to slow down the surge of Airbnbs, that one of the ways to do it is to put some brakes on it to make it a little less attractive financially for people to do this, right?
Correct.
So when you limit the number of days they can rent, you're potentially cutting that back. And, you know, I think we felt that 180 for many is probably not that different than what they're going to get for occupancy anyway, right? So
probably.
Yeah, that was my thinking.
So.
But by removing the 26 weekends, it at least opens them up to renting it. All the weekends are not there.
Right. All the prime time.
And keep in mind, from the county required modifications, owner occupied or residents would have no limits on days or weekends or anything. So we're talking about limiting what we'll call non full-time resident people.
We do certainly have people that are buying homes thinking, I think, David, kind of what your neighbors maybe are doing, right? Which is, I'll buy the house and rent it out to pay for it, and I'll use it once in a while, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing that's eating into the affordable housing for the local folks. But I guess I'll say that's my opinion anyway.
And that
Oh.
letter we just got from this week was exactly that.
But my perspective is also, I mean, they're going to own this house anyway. Should it sit empty, 80% of the time.
Then it's a disincentive from buying a house just to have it be an Airbnb. And I think that's part of the point.
But a lot of the people in these neighborhoods didn't want to live next to a hotel or a motel.
Right.
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 So essentially by doing this, you're saying that I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'm trying to discern that if this is going to eliminate any speculative Airbnb purchases in the town, or Airbnb operations that are full-time operations that aren't already grandfathered. Is that the intent here?
That's the intent.
Again, I think it does make it somewhat less attractive as a business to say I'm going to go buy a second home and I can afford it by renting it out 90% of the time, right?
Right.
I've
And
had a number of phone calls regarding that, and that is the deciding factor on whether they're going to buy the house or not, because ultimately this is a business opportunity, and it doesn't necessarily make sense if they can't do that.
Right.
As opposed to the place being their primary idea as a second home, and I'd like to be able to make a few extra bucks here and there. So it sounds like the board is leaning toward just leaving the 180 days there, which is fine.
Maybe more.
Yeah. Take the weekends out. That's
Okay.
that's good.
All right. Very good. All right, got it. One last issue. I just want to, I think I already have a good answer on this one, but when we wrote this law, keep in mind, we created a separate chapter, but what we did was we added that chapter into our current zoning code as an accessory use in the code. And I wanted to make sure everybody was aware that that's what we're doing. So essentially what we're saying, forget about all the other restrictions we got on this, is an STR is an accessory use to the primary use of the property. So if the primary use is a residence, then the STR is an accessory to that. And there are two words that come to mind that out of the court system is subordinate to and incidental to the primary use of the property. So that's where it's installed. And I got some information I sent out to the town board, and I think to my zoning committee today, I got from the county. That seems to be what most towns have done. The other option would be make it an allowed use as part of our allowed uses in the districts. But I think in order, I don't think that's the right way to go, because that makes it much easier for it to become a business as opposed to an accessory or an incidental use.
I think the regulations we're putting on it point pretty strongly to accessory use.
Yeah.
I guess the question though, Drew, is if it's an accessory / subordinate use and it's non-owner occupied, and it's again one of these where they live in it 25% of the time and rent it out 75% of the time, it's hard to argue that's an accessory use.
I agree, but it does, if we leave it there, it does give the town some enforcement if there becomes an issue with a particular piece of property as opposed to everything in general.
I guess I'm just thinking when it ends up in court.
Yeah.
We've been there, so.
Yeah. Well, what I mean, but keep in mind, in the court system, it would fall on the property owner to to prove that the STR is subordinate and incidental to the primary purpose, primary use of the property.
Well, clearly though, if you've got an LLC set up to do a non-owner occupied Airbnb, I mean, what's it incidental to?
Right.
Well,
And what do you
but keep in
do?
mind, keep in mind, most, I mean, I know a lady that lives off of Moonhaw that has a cabin on her property. She wants to rent it out as an STR. She lives there all the time, but she wants an LLC to protect her own property from any kind of issues that come up.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's an LLC or an individual owner that lives in New York City and bought a house to rent out. You can't, at least in my opinion, you can't argue that the rental is somehow incidental to it being a house. I don't know how you can do that.
And how do you address that when you have again our friend Joe Ostrander, who has a second house, or anyone that's allowed in the town to have a second Airbnb, or rental STR, and it's not their primary residence? Is that an accessory use to an empty house? It doesn't make sense to me.
That's why you guys get paid the big bucks.
Yep.
Joe, you mute yourself. No, you see what I'm saying is like, I think the intent there is interesting, but I don't know if it's practical in a sense. We're allowing a certain amount of grandfathered things in. We're allowing people who are residents to have a second property and use it primarily as an STR. And we're saying, but you can only do it for 180 days a year. And then if there's a problem with it, we're saying it's an accessory use. And to Steve's point, I don't see how that would hold up in court. Maybe I'm missing something.
Well, that's the reason I brought it up, because the only, in our existing code, the only other place it could be put in there is an allowed use. And you would probably have to put it in at the 10-acre zoning and just let it float down through everything else. So it's an allowed use in all zones, and it doesn't have that accessory restriction on it.
So what would be the downside to that? I'm trying to understand why you're favoring the accessory. What's the downside to allowed use?
Probably none, because of the other restrictions in the code. It probably would work that way.
So let me play devil's advocate. Why does it have to be in the zoning code at all? Why couldn't it just be a separate law?
You need to, the zoning code is what we have as far as our land use thing. If you put it separate, it needs to be tied into our zoning code somehow, so that it actually is part of the land use documents.
And we're also looking at it in terms of building code compliance and things like that. And that's all in zoning, right?
I mean, most towns, because of the way their zoning code is structured, they would have put this right in their own zoning code. Most of them do. We opted to create a separate chapter to try to keep it a little cleaner, and instead of trying to change our zoning code.
Oh, I see.
If our zoning code was structured a different way, it would probably been easier to put it in there, but it's not structured in a way that makes it easy just to add it in. So it sounds like there's a lean towards just making it generally an allowed use.
I think so, Drew. The accessory use, other towns might be doing it, but you'd have to look at their full law to see if they're not allowing it, but they're only allowing owner occupied, right? In which case you could claim it's accessory use.
Right. Or they haven't really thought about that problem.
Yeah.
There was one other thing in the chat I missed earlier, and I don't think she's here now because it was like a half hour ago. Was Mary Ann Shepherd asked if the grandfather provision applies to people who are currently running Airbnbs but are not town residents, and I'm pretty sure that they would be grandfathered in.
Yeah, that date we were talking about, basically, if at that date, when we approved this law, if you're running an Airbnb at that time, you're grandfathered in.
Right.
As long as you get a permit in that first year.
A legitimate
Still have to
Airbnb,
get,
that-
you still have to
a
get it.
legitimate Airbnb that the county is aware of.
Correct. Yeah.
Nice. All right. Is there any other places in here? I see that we have like one area that had a fine assigned to it for not registering, I believe it was.
Yeah, that was $500 for not
Is there
registering.
fine structures or what are the penalties for people? And it's probably in here and I didn't look at it recently. For people who don't comply with the residency or don't comply with the, other things. I see violations and complaints.
I think now that we've sort of defined that a little bit better, we might have to look at this and whether we want to put in there that I think the real fine is not so much money as much as your permit's revoked.
Right. Okay. And is that clear enough in there?
We can take a look at and make sure that it is.
Yeah, I'd like the people know what they're getting into when they.
There were some fines called out, Drew, in the, was it Saugerties that we just copied on?
I didn't really read that one all the way through yet, but yeah, from one of the things that if you're going to put fines in there, they have to be in the law per Dan. And I don't know how, we'll take a look at that, see if there's places that.
I would just review that again and be sure. I know you worked on it hard and I'd just like to make sure that we've got that in a row. So.
Okay, but that pretty much.
Now, Joe made a comment that she doesn't think the buyers will even look at the law before they purchase the properties, only the smart ones. And I would have to agree because we've seen some people who have bought properties recently and they didn't even know what they bought.
Yeah.
Diane and I got a laugh out of one of them. All right, is anything else on this?
I think that's it. I think we got enough. So the
that's
idea
great.
would be for the town board, the idea would be to take these comments, have the zoning committee try to come up with a new version of the law. What I would like to do is, I'll say unofficially, bring it back to the town board for their comments before we do a formal presentation to the town board.
Okay,
All right, sort of like we did the last time.
great. Any other comments on short-term rentals? Okay.
Hi. Are you guys talking all about the number of people in the rentals? Like if they're
Who is this? Is this Allison Irwin?
Yeah, hi.
Hi, Allison. How are you?
Hi. This is actually quite interesting. I wondered, a lot of people say that like people will rent these rentals and then like tons of people will come and it'll be like this huge party and there'll be more people than should be in the house. Is there any language addressing something like that?
Yes.
Yes.
Our code enforcement officer has the right to say what the occupancy is based on the rental.
And Allison, the proposed law is on the town website, so you can look through it. And it kind of goes through a lot of those things. You know, the committee's been working on this for, gosh, over a year and a half now.
Oh, I know. You guys are doing a good job.
Thank you. All right. Anything else on short-term rental? Okay.
Thank you guys for all your input.
Thank you, Allison. And thank you, everyone, for your weighing in on that and having a civil discussion. Comprehensive plan. I wanted to give you all an update. I spoke to a couple of the board members. I don't know if everyone got this, but we had an application in with New York State Department of State for a climate smart grant to develop a comprehensive plan. It was a $75,000 ask. We were looking at. We hired a pair of consultants to help us write the grant, and we learned in December that we did not get the grant. Since then, we had a debriefing by New York State Department of State how we did on the grant, what, where we were weak. We did pretty good on the Regional Economic Development Council's recommendation for the grant. That was out of 100 points for the whole thing. Their recommendation can be up to 20 points, and they gave us 15. We did as you recall, this grant, we didn't have a lot of time to work on it. We had maybe a month, and I was able to solicit lots of letters of support for it, including the county executive and many other groups. And so that was a pretty good rating. The rest of it, they went through it a little bit and gave us areas that we could enhance the application. They were both basically looking at a little more detail in things. But there was a couple of things that were significant about that debriefing. And one was the head of the Climate Smart program was at the debriefing for the town of Olive. And our planners thought that was fairly significant that they were there. What was also interesting is they listened to our comments about our situation and the need for the comprehensive plan. And they were very interested to hear from a watershed community. And the conversation we had with them even led them to consider just automatically giving 5 points to a watershed community. So that was kind of a success. Where we had struggled the most on the grant application was a lot of the state grants are geared toward looking at serving economic disparities and disadvantaged communities and things of that nature. And because our town is a little more homogeneous than other towns could be, we kind of scored low in that area. But they were very strongly suggesting that we reapply for this grant. So we were encouraged, and it was a really good meeting. It lasted pretty long time, like an hour, to go over this. So the consultants and I decided to have a debriefing amongst ourselves about the debriefing, and that was interesting. And they knew that we struggled in that one area, and we would never be able to overcome that. And we thought there were some areas that we could maybe make up for it, but they were encouraged, but not overly positive about it. What I looked at it is that I wanted to move forward. I've been talking about a comprehensive plan since I got on the board. I got a lot of resistance when I was on the board, and I've been talking about it as supervisor and looking forward to getting this. The intense land issue that we have in town with the demand for land and housing has made this even more important to have, in my opinion. So what I decided was when talking about to the consultants, I said, well, how can we move forward? And what we agreed to was, at one of their suggestions was, why don't we look at the proposal that we made in our grant application and break it down into two sections, phase 1 and phase 2. And phase 1 will be looking at what we have and data-wise in the town, what we have, how identifiers, what documents we have, what data we have, what documents we've gathered, like in the NRI from the OCAC, that we can start to gather and say, this is what we have. And then also in the phase 1 aspect of it, have community outreach into having meetings, public meetings with stakeholders, and getting input from the community on what they see is the town issues and how we can, what the town is like now and what it will look like in the future and what people think we should be doing. And then take that data, and that will complete phase 1. I let them know that I think that I can, if we break that down, the initial grant was $75,000. I suggested if they can get me a proposal under $20,000 for phase 1, that we would entertain that. So the meeting left with them looking to put together a proposal to do phase one out of a comprehensive plan, moving toward a comprehensive plan. So I expect to have that at the next board meeting, and we can decide if we would like to move on that then. We did put money aside at the end of the year to help us with this into our reserves. So that's where we stand with that. Any questions or comments on that? Okay, moving forward. I did want to let the town know this is not on the agenda. It's additional stuff that came up last minute. The DEC issued a notice of violation to us on our speedies permit for the town pool. And we got a, let me start at the beginning. In July of 2020, we were in the middle of the initial COVID outbreak. We had a person on our staff who was responsible for doing the monthly reporting to the DEC on our speedies permit for the town pool. That person was out on a quarantine, and that report never got done in a timely fashion. And it was subsequently reported once we got a notification that we had violated our responsibility in filing that. And we filed, we responded to the notice of violation to try to, it told us that if we responded, we would not incur a fine. And we got a notice last week that we had about a $1,200 fine because of this. I called up the number on the letter, and I actually got had a great conversation with the director of that program, and we are in the process of writing them a narrative on what happened and the COVID aspect of it, trying to get our the stress we were under and trying to understand whether we could even open a pool during that summer, et cetera, et cetera. So he was pretty open to trying to find a resolution outside of us going to a hearing that was required in the letter. So I wanted to notify you of this in case at the next board meeting, we're looking at some kind of fine from DEC, and that's where it's coming from. But I am working on trying to get that mitigated. Any questions on it? We've never missed a report on it in the entire time we've had a pool. We did get a request from Brian. Where did I bury you here, Brian? Jeez. You want to speak, Brian? Can we unmute Brian?
I'm here. Can you hear me, Jim?
I can hear you now.
I'm sorry. I actually have a very poor signal here tonight. But anyway, I will speak of requesting the board again. I requested it last year. We're looking to replace the 1978 Oshkosh plow truck that we do have in service right now. As I spoke last year, we can no longer get parts for this, certain parts for this truck. But anyway, I'm looking to obtain something used either through our auction avenues or in a private sale. This is up to $50,000 I'm requesting out of our reserve. And it may be something, last year I did not have any luck at the close of the year to find something. This is a truck that doesn't run all season long, so I'm not looking to spend the money on a full replacement at this time with other stuff that needs to be cycled out. So I'm asking the board again, as I did last year, if I do find something in a private sale or our Auctions International that we've used in the past, and other auction companies that approved the purchase to replace this 1978 truck. So
I will make that motion to approve the replacement of the 1978 Oshkosh in the year 2022 out of the Machinery Reserve A up to $50,000 through a private sale or auction company. Can I get a second for that?
I'll second.
I'll think.
Any discussion?
I think we already discussed it quite a bit last year when.
Yeah, we
for
talked
that
about
audit.
this for a long time.
For the auction.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, that's carried, Brian. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we are moving on to committee, commission, and department reports. Let me ask you this. We have a lot here. It's the beginning of the year, and we had a holiday season right before us. Does anyone have anything to report?
I can report that the Olive Conservation Advisory Committee is met and they're going to meet tomorrow. So
Okay.
I'll report next month.
I would like to just run through mine real quick so that I can just index them in and it's real fast.
Get them in the record. Sure.
Okay, I just want to get them in the record.
Say one more thing. Wait. You have Jim as the liaison to the Olive Conservation Advisory Committee on this.
And me on technology and Drew on Scenic Byway.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I
an
probably
old one.
copied and pasted from an old one.
From last year's.
Well, Jim wasn't the liaison last year either.
Yeah, but he was on there for like the first 2 months of last year.
I think I went back for a few.
Ah,
I'll fix that for next time.
thank you.
Okay, so I got the police report, December 22, they got 22, but it's 21. Stats, year to date was 951, total December for 80. I'm gonna, they had 9 tickets, but they had 80 calls. I'm just making it quick. December, town clerk's office took in 14,656.89. And I have the monthly report for the first aid, 51 calls. And I have 2019 for Olive First Aid ran 381 calls. In 2020, they did 420 calls. 2021, they did 501 calls.
Wow.
Okay, and that's it. And I got Barry's report too, so that will be available in the office if anybody wants to see it.
All right.
That's it.
Any other comments on the committee, commission, and department reports? All right, we are going into the adjournment in memory of, which is it's very sad. It's been a sad couple of months with this stuff. But I'd like to make a motion to adjourn in memory of Ella Gilly. She's a Van Leuven. In memory of Ellen Nixdorf. And in memory of Marguerite Hagel. And in memory, and this one really pains me, is Dino Giuliano. And I would like to just mention that Dino served on the town zoning board of appeals for 47 years. He was a dedicated Town of Olive servant. He was a remarkable man, a member of the American Legion, veteran, just big family in town, and my heart goes out to them. I'd also like, I'd like to make that motion to adjourn, but I'd also like to make a motion before that to put a page in the minute book for Dino Giuliano. Can I get a second on that?
I'll second.
Vicky, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And motion to adjourn.
Hey, Jim.
Oh, Tom's gonna jump in. I knew he stayed up for something.
Yeah, I'm still awake. Just a quick public service announcement here. With this cold weather, everybody's heating system's working overtime, and you see a lot of crazy things, space heaters and stoves and everything being used as a supplement. And I think everybody that has a TV or reads a newspaper saw what happened in New York City, the tragedy down there, all caused by a space heater. Electricity is the most misunderstood commodity we have in our homes. Most people don't know the difference between a volt, an amp, and a watt. But anything that Yeah, Jim, the electrician is laughing there. Anything with a heating element, though, is a high current device, right? And you should never use an extension cord unless it's a super heavy one that's approved for that kind of a load. We see this in the fire department. People say, hey, why'd that extension cord burn up? You know, it had a UL label on it. Well, it was something they bought in Walmart, and you got to read the UL rating on it. You know, maybe it was good for some lights or a fan or something like that. But like I say, we just have to use caution and look at the specs on things when you put them into service. So that's it. I just had to squeeze that in.
I really appreciate that. You know, I totally agree with you, and that and any generator use and all that stuff. It's a challenging time out there in terms of the cold. I also wanted to add to that and say that it's a challenging time for this relentless disease that we're facing. And our numbers today were reported in as 73 cases in the town of Olive. Fortunately, you know, this new variant, you know, may not affect people as difficultly as previous. But I did want to remind people that to do the precautions, wear the mask, you know, stay safe, stay away from people. They're predicting this will peak this month and start to go down, and hopefully in the spring we can start to, you know, live our lives again. But it's a sad time all around, and I appreciate your message, Tom. Thank you. Anyone else before we adjourn?
Just want to say thank you to the community that showed up tonight. It's nice to see some more
Yes.
people.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Okay, I make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Good night.
All in favor?
Aye.
Second?
Who's-
All in favor? Aye.
Who seconded?
I did.
Thank you. You're even quiet on here, Vicky.
Good night, everyone. Thanks a lot. Sorry it took so long.
Good night.
Good night.
Aye.